The Downtown Rams podcast is brought to you today by Draft. Looking for the best fantasy sports site on the planet? Sign up with Draft today. For a limited time only, our listeners will receive $3 matching their first deposit of at least $10. Use promo code DTR or visit draft.com/DTR to sign up now. Draft. Fantasy for the people. Now enjoy the show.
Caught by Brandon Cooks. Shoot your arrows. Cooper Kupp plucks it out of the air and gives the Rams the lead. Robert Wood, touchdown. LA. Goff goes crashing into the end zone. Aaron Donald almost beat the football there. Corey Littleton, have yourself a day. Picked off. Marcus Peters coming off the edge, and Ryan will be wrapped up by Clay Matthews. Everett in stride. Wow!
Franklin Myers gets his hand down there.
Leto got a hand on it. Did he pick it? He did! Racing down the sideline is Akeem Talib. Gurley for MVP! Touchdown LA! Picked off by John Johnson. Well, Dante Fowler, who is able to get to breathe. Greg Zuerlein sends the Rams to the Super Bowl! LA will play for the Lombardi!
Welcome back, guys, to another Downtown Rams podcast. It's episode 235. I'm your host, Jake Ellenbogen. Joining me, as always, is Alexis Kraft. And we come to you following the Rams-Raiders first preseason game. It didn't go as well as everyone hoped, but there are some things that we definitely can take away from. Some good things, some bad things, some ugly things. So excited to dive into this. Hopefully next week's game is going to be a little bit more exciting, but we have plenty to talk about. So, Alexis, just take it from here. What was the biggest thing, the biggest takeaway that you had from this game?
Well, I would say the biggest takeaway for me is the Rams defense didn't look great to me. Now, keep in mind, obviously, we were without a lot of our starters in the defense, but I should just also say that while I wasn't impressed with our defense in this game, I do think that it in some ways very beneficial because it was a learning experience and now they can go back and look at what they did wrong and fix it. But it just seemed like there was a lot of holes in the defense, especially like the front line, don't you think?
Yeah, it was weird because it started off our guy Landis Durham gets the start, surprisingly on the edge, and you and I obviously big fans of him, no denying his talent, but it didn't look like on the depth chart like he was that highly in favor with the coaching staff. And this is kind of why when we were going over the depth chart, like it's not official, kind of trying to tell everybody. So I like that he got the start. There were definitely some issues. I mean, like Tanzel Smart to me has just proven he's not going to get much better from here on out. The former 6th round pick from Tulane, I didn't see any improvement last year. He looked really bad in preseason last year. And then this year, I just feel like he followed it up, struggled again. And then, really, I think one of the biggest storylines, coming in was Sebastian Joseph Day, how he gets that starting, label, right? He becomes the starting nose tackle in that set on the depth chart, and he didn't look good at all. He got pushed around by, guys that probably won't, I won't say they won't make the team, but, if you have a starter in there for preseason, you expect your starter to, definitely make it known that he's the guy, right? He's the starter. He's a starting caliber player. And I just didn't get that vibe from him. I got more of that vibe from Greg Gaines, who came on later on. But like you said, the defense struggled early on. There were definitely some, bright spots. I don't think Stephen Parker, you can say, was the starter, but he played a lot of snaps there, and he came down with an interception, had a good day overall, was great last year in preseason. But then I think, Kevin Peterson, this is his first game back from a major injury that took him out last year, and he received an elite grade from Pro Football Focus. This is somebody that I think really, made himself known. And the problem with Kevin Peterson isn't his talent. it isn't even really that lies with him. It's that Troy Hill was on the sidelines in street clothes, meaning like he's free to go, doesn't have to really work for it. He got the extension. The Rams believe that he's going to make the roster and he's a lock. Unfortunately, that kind of hurts Peterson because it's now up in the air whether or not the Rams are just going to keep an extra spot. You know, we assume that they're going to go with Talib, Peters, Nickel, and then you look at, you know, Troy Hill and then David Long, and that's 5. So if there's one more spot left, you don't keep 7 corners. You just don't. 6 is even too much at times. So it could be all for naught, and that would be really disappointing. But again, you know, you had a lot of holes. You know, I really wasn't impressed with the way Bryce Hager looked. And, you know, we could point guys out all day, but I think really just the beginning of the game, the defense struggled, and there were some bright spots, you know, down towards the end of the first half and into the second half.
No, I definitely agree with that. And I think the next thing that we should talk about is the quarterback play, because that was something that everybody was interested to see going into the game. And honestly, I think people were mostly excited. As weird as it is to say this sentence, I think people were really excited to see Blake Bortles play. I think people wanted to see him in a Rams uniform. They wanted to see what he could do. And I honestly thought that he did pretty well. What do you think, Jake?
Yeah, you know, it's a case of, you know, you look at the box score, and if you didn't watch the game, you're like, oh, Bortles 3 of 8, yikes. But I mean, he had 3 drops that were charged to other receivers, and I thought he looked good. You know, comfortable in the pocket. I know people were complaining about how long his delivery was, and I mean, I could see how that could be an issue, but he looked comfortable, and he clearly looked like he belonged in the NFL, and clearly looked like, you know, legit backup quarterback and not somebody that's fighting for a spot. He was rated the top offensive player by Pro Football Focus for the Rams, him and Kadarius Hodge, who kind of hooked up for, you know, a pretty good, you know, at least I think they had a good, you know, chemistry type of, you know, thing going there. You know, Michael Thomas coming in is another guy, a lot of buzz in camp. Wasn't hearing really anything for Kadarius Hodge, but I was seeing Hodge in all these videos with him with the ones, and I was like, oh, you know, Hodge is getting some run. And then, you know, everyone's talking about how Mike Thomas is really, you know, emerged as a guy that can make this roster, and he got 1 target. He came down with the catch, but, you know, he didn't really get a chance to really show that off. And I do think Kadarius Hodge made the most of his opportunity. Just looks like a better route runner than anyone else on the field yesterday. He was just the best receiver overall, in my opinion. And for that reason, you know, I do think that Hodge is the wide receiver 5 lock. And I'm going to say it right now, you know, he is a guaranteed roster spot. I don't think the Rams had him out there late in the game for anything other than he's not going to be able to get these reps at receiver during the regular season. Why not give it to him now? They like him a lot, a guy that can win on special teams. So I was definitely impressed, and I think he took a, you know, another step this year as far as development. So, you know, like you said, you know, I thought Bortles looked good. I thought Kadarius Hodge looked good, but sticking with the quarterbacks, Brandon Allen, you know, yikes.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on him?
It was just, I wasn't impressed. Obviously, I don't think anybody was impressed. I wasn't like expecting him to blow me away, but I wasn't expecting him to do that bad. Now, I understand that this was preseason game number 1. There's 3 more games to be played. He could have had an off game. He could have been nervous. There could have been something going on. I don't know. But he did not look like an NFL caliber quarterback out there. Really, for any of the plays that he made, he didn't look like he should be out there. And it honestly was kind of frustrating to watch, just because, you know, you obviously hope that all of your backup quarterbacks are going to be, you know, able to step in if need be. So, I mean, all I can say is bummer. I mean, what about you?
Yikes is the first word that comes to mind. This is somebody that is going to turn 27 years of age at the beginning of September. So before the season starts, he will be a 27-year-old quarterback that we're calling developmental. We're, you know, making the excuse of, oh, he should be on the practice squad, or, you know, no. I'm sorry, but he's older than our starting quarterback, Jared Goff. That's a red flag, number one. Number two, he didn't show any improvement from last year to this year. Okay, didn't show anything, and I honestly would make the argument he regressed. And to me, you got to earn it in this league. And to me, I just don't see. Sean Mannion never really earned it to me. Brandon Allen, he's had the opportunity to be in this offense, and just think about it. This is this golden opportunity for a backup quarterback to come in, with this coaching and come in and have the ability to start, basically, because he basically started the game. Like, he didn't actually start the game, but he was the starter. Like, he played from the end of the first until like the midway through the fourth quarter, and I just don't know why. If anybody who reads Downtown Rams remembers, I was big on John Wolford, played for the Arizona Hotshots in the AAF, and somebody that I felt really made an impact in the AAF and was fun to watch and had some really nice mobility, had some poise in the pocket, arm strength, somebody that definitely threw with accuracy, and he had confidence. And that's just really the only thing that came close to that was Brandon Allen's mobility, I guess, is the only thing that really came close to that. And, you have to keep in mind, Brandon Allen's 27. How many NFL games has he started? 0. Regular season games. So, I would make the argument that the fourth stringer is actually more experienced in Wolford because he went to the AAF and played in those meaningful games. And, people want to, crap on the AAF, but I mean, they've been over 50 players from the AAF that are on NFL rosters right now. So it was a legitimate league. It had talent. And, I think Wolford came in late in the game and really brought the energy back to this offense. It was, somewhat there with Bortles. I think the problem is that they took Bortles out too quickly. The running game couldn't get anything going, so it put more pressure on Blake to really make plays with just his arm and couldn't really rely on play action, which is such a staple in a Sean McVay offense. And albeit, it's going to be vanilla play calling. It was actually Shane Waldron's first time calling plays, because Sean wanted, Shane Waldron to get acclimated to calling plays and, show that resume to, a future coaching position down the line. But, I just think, to me, once they took Blake Bortles out, I said this, Brandon Allen absolutely disrupted the entire offense. You can't evaluate players, you can't evaluate receivers that, get open and can't, they don't have an opportunity to make a play. Allen held on the ball too long. Even his, mobility looked off. Like, he wasn't able to move as well as, say, Wolford did. I just was really impressed with, the way Wolford came in and, threw a dart to Bachman, our guy. And then another guy of ours, he throws, a nice pass up near the right sidelines to Nasimba Webster, who, high points the ball, makes a nice catch. And, he's another guy that, we'll talk about. But, as far as the quarterbacks are concerned, I would rather see Wolford start the rest of preseason. And I know I've said that he was going to be, bound to do something big in this preseason. And, really, you can't do anything if you only play 5 minutes. And, it was really disappointing to see the Rams finally move the ball. And it was late in the fourth because they stuck with Brandon Allen that long after 3 and out and 3 and out and 3 and out. So that was my take on the quarterbacks.
Yeah, I think Wolford looked light years ahead of Allen. I definitely would have rather, like you said, seen him play more than Brandon Allen. But, I think this is something that you get in preseason when you don't play most of your starters. I think in the NFL nowadays, you're kind of starting to see this trend where teams really don't like to put their starters out there. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Obviously, the big concern is injury. Why would you want to get one of your starters that you rely on hurt in the preseason? But also, preseason is very much a learning experience for everybody on the team, the coaches, the players, etc. So they basically are putting people out on the field to see what they can do, to see what works, to see what doesn't. So when you have that situation going on, plus the fact that none of your starters are out there, it can kind of look like a mess. And that's just kind of what my take was on the game last night. I kind of thought it was a hot mess. I didn't think there were very many bright spots. The only bright spot that to me that really stood out is I thought Taylor Rapp played exceptionally well. I was impressed from what I saw out of him. And I think, he obviously is a rookie, so he's figuring things out. But I mean, he seems to be kind of moving along well in that process. And it was kind of fun to watch him. But it did seem overall that it was just kind of a mess out there last night, which it's weird to say that that's okay because it's never really, really okay. But that's kind of the point, like I was saying earlier, of preseason is to just figure things out, see what works, see what doesn't, see who can do what. So I think they definitely are going to have a lot to analyze and look at and debate on before they go into week 2 of preseason.
Yeah, I think it was a collective mess really on the defensive line. They had a hard time really generating pressure aside from Landis Durham. And really he's part of the linebackers in this defense. So, I'm not even going to give him that. But I think really the secondary looked good. It's just when Dominic Hatfield, went to make a play, that's when things went south. And, unfortunately, I don't really see the point of starting Dominic Hatfield. I don't know how he's going to make this roster. I think, you got better play at it. Dante Dion late in the game, he had 41 snaps, but he really didn't get in until the third quarter. And then I would say David Long, it was nice seeing him out there. He's got a long way to go, in my opinion. It's, one game, of course, but he didn't have his best game. But I was really impressed with, the safety play from Stephen Parker, from Jake Gervais, the UDFA, from Kevin Peterson at cornerback, Dante Dion. I thought those guys performed well. Defensive back, Ramon Richards, Darius Williams, he had a good game as well. So, a lot of guys that played well in the secondary and the guys that didn't, I think, they definitely start to stick out. But the defensive line to me was the biggest whoa. They just didn't look good. I mean, they really didn't. John Franklin Myers was part of that unit for a bit, and he didn't really pop. I wasn't really expecting him to really play, to be quite honest, but and then I don't think Boogie Roberts didn't get in until the fourth quarter or third quarter. Him and Bryant Jones and Marquise Copeland. So we'll see those guys as the preseason rolls along. I think you'll start to see the defensive line start to be able to attack more. But it wasn't a good showing by the defensive line. And, the secondary flashed big time. And then they had some other, they had some hiccups here and there. But 2 interceptions, that's a good way to go. I want to talk about the running back position, though, because, you look at this and their leading rusher had 16 yards, Darrell Henderson. Now, what were your thoughts on this? Because I think Rams fans are so used to that one guy just blowing up every single year, it seems like, in preseason as a running back. And this game just didn't have anything to speak of in the run game. So, what are your thoughts on that? Because I know people are freaking out. To me, I saw Darrell Henderson, who wasn't able to get anything going in the run game because the offensive line didn't really play all that well. But he's somebody that absolutely excelled in the pass protection game. And I mean, he was really good in pass pro, looks NFL ready. And I think that is what's going to be able to keep him on the field, whereas somebody like John Kelly struggled. Justin Davis didn't even see the field. They didn't give Matt Colburn an opportunity until the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I agree with, everything you said. I felt like it was a disappointing showing from our running back core. I think part of that might have had to have been the offensive line play, because I wasn't really impressed with the offensive line really either. And I felt like a lot of those plays, they just collapsed so quickly that our running backs didn't even really have a chance to even see what was in front of them. But yeah, it was kind of a bummer. I would have had liked to seen some more, especially out of Matt Colburn, who you mentioned. I would have liked to see him out in the field longer. I thought I wanted to see kind of more flashiness from Darrell Henderson. Although, again, I still feel like when I was watching him, a lot of his mishaps were due to the offensive line. So I'm not really sure how I felt about that. But yeah, I just thought it was disappointing. I think it just kind of goes with kind of the overall theme of this game. There wasn't really a lot to go off of. There wasn't really much to witness talent-wise, I think, from the running backs. I mean, if anything, again, it was just kind of a bummer. I would have liked to have seen more. I would have liked to have seen more from the offensive line as well, because I think that probably would have impacted how our running backs did.
Yeah, I think Darrell Henderson with the pass protection was huge. But John Kelly, he had an opportunity to do some things, after contact, after the first hit, after the second hit, still, can obviously, extend a drive, can extend a play. And he's going to make the roster because John Kelly thrived in special teams. Matt Colburn, to me, should have been in way earlier. I just don't think they gave him enough of a shot in what was a 14-3 game. They could have run the ball more. And Colburn has wiggle to him where I think, he doesn't end up finishing, with much in the stat sheet. I believe he had like 3 yards per carry or maybe less than that. But he had that one run on 3rd and short to get the first down. He basically had to muscle his way and then juke by a defender. And, that was a good play. It's one of those things. They needed that to extend the drive, and, he gets it done. And, I just think that I would have liked to see more of him for sure. And I think Justin Davis not playing probably means that he's toast. I don't see him making the roster. They're going to keep 4 running backs at this point. I think they're going to keep Gurley. They're going to keep Brown. They're going to keep Kelly, and they're going to keep Henderson. I think it's, up to Colburn to either fight for a practice squad spot or prove that the Rams need to keep 5 running backs. But, I think what hurts Colburn in the long run is the fact that Kelly is so good on special teams. And I think that might hurt him. Like, why would the Rams keep, 5 running backs when they can get special teams play out of, Kelly? But I mean, all in all, I think this is a running back group that's going to have more opportunities as preseason rolls along. It'll be fun to watch for sure. I kind of want to touch on the wide receivers a bit. They basically started Kaderl Hodge, Mike Thomas, and Austin Prohl. Prohl did not have the best game. He definitely struggled to really, make the most of an opportunity in the return game. So it's just kind of like I would have liked to see more out of Austin Prohl. I would have liked to see more out of Bachman, to be quite honest. But Nasimba Webster, and I would have liked to see more out of JoJo Natson. But Nasimba Webster, in my opinion, should get a serious run at the return job, not just kick returning, but punt returning as well. When you're narrowing down the roster, I mean, it's hard to keep 6 receivers. I already told you that, Kaderl is the 5th. They kept 6 last year by having Nats in there. I think if you want a guy that's going to bring, an ability in the receiving game, the ability as a gunner on special teams, and the ability to return kicks and punts, I think Nasimba Webster has to be the favorite to get that 6th spot. Bachman, trailing him as the 7th guy. I just think he brings a lot to the table. And last night you saw him, go up and make that catch, high pointing the football. Goes to show you he's not just some return specialist. This is somebody that can actually play. And I'm excited to see his growth. And then I think, looking at the tight end spot, you have your guys, obviously, in Gerald Everett and Tyler Higbee. Johnny Munt got the start, had one of the passes, I believe, Brandon Allen threw to him. It was for, a long gain. I think it was like 20-something yards. Johnny Munt, again, is somebody that I'm not extremely high on because I think the Rams have 3 better tight end options below him in Keenan Brown, in Kendall Blanton, and Romello Brooker. But Brooker struggled big time. He graded out below the 30 line for PFF, so that really bad grade. But you definitely saw he just is not. He really struggles as a blocker. That's his issue. So I did mention that. Keenan Brown didn't really get much of a shot. and I don't even really remember seeing Blanton out there. So, that's kind of the weird thing is like, have they already given it to Munt, and are they just kind of hoping he, fends everybody off? Are they going to keep 3? Are they going to keep 4? What are they going to do? But a lot obviously there. What are your thoughts on the receiver room and the tight end room?
I think in regards to the receivers, I agree with you. I thought Nasimba Webster did a fantastic job. I was very impressed by him. I think I would have liked to have seen more from Alex Bachman. And then I think JoJo Natson and Kadero Hodge were kind of the obvious starters out of kind of the bench group. I think they are people who are kind of established on the team and who the coaches really like. And I don't really think it's their status on the team is up in the air like these other receivers. I was a little bit disappointed, as you said, in Prohl's game because I felt like he is someone who I really like, but I don't think that he performed that well. So that was kind of disappointing as well. But in regards to tight ends, again, I said this on the last episode, I believe. I think that Johnny Munt is not deserving of that third tight end spot. I think, like you mentioned, all the guys behind him, Kendall Blanton, Keenan Brown, and Romello Brooker are more talented than he is. So I think that any one of them could beat him out for that third tight end spot. But I do agree with you that Brooker struggled. I thought that was kind of disappointing. And then I think, Kendall Blanton, I would like to see more from him. He's someone that I'm going to be watching, I think, a lot as these next preseason games roll around, because I think he has a lot of potential, but I think he's got to kind of work some things out at that tight end position. But I do think that third tight end position currently held by Johnny Munt is very much up for grabs. So that is going to be something interesting to watch.
Yeah, it certainly will. I would like to see Keenan Brown get more than 6 snaps, but I guess that's what the rest of the preseason's for. Moving on the offensive line. So to me, for all the people that were screaming that Bobby Evans is, the future left tackle of this team, let's just pump the brakes there a little bit. I think this game really showed you that Bobby Evans, no matter where he plays on this offensive line, is... he is a long way to go, putting it, bluntly, as a 3rd round pick, like a long ways to go.
Well, like I've been saying, David Edwards is a guy who we took in the 7th round, I believe. And he is someone who I said before the draft, I said it during the draft, I said after the draft, I thought David Edwards was a 2nd or 3rd round pick. I thought Bobby Evans was like a late 5th or 6th round pick. And when you watch this preseason game, yeah, I thought Edwards by far played better than Bobby Evans. And we gave up stuff for Bobby Evans. I don't remember if we ended up getting it back, but we traded up for him in the draft. He's a guy that they really kind of banked on, a guy who I was really questionable about and who I know you were questionable about as well. And I just thought that watching him, I was, as you said, he's got a lot of work to do. I don't know what's going on there. But David Edwards, I thought, was a bright spot. Like I said, overall, the offensive line I wasn't really impressed with. I felt like they collapsed very easily. I think everyone on the offensive line had at least a moment where they completely collapsed. But I thought that David Edwards somewhat held his own, and I was way more impressed by him than I was by Bobby Evans.
Yeah, David Edwards is really interesting to me because, he's somebody that played right tackle all of his days at Wisconsin, and the Rams see him and they're like, we want you to be left tackle, basically. He's been playing left tackle. He's gotten first team reps at left tackle. I don't really know what their plan is. I don't really know why they went out and traded for Bobby Evans. Do they see him as a guard? Do they see him as a tackle? Where do they see him going? That's really the interesting thing to me. Granted, I do think, the offensive line definitely missed Noteboom and Allen, who, to me, I get why they weren't in the lineup because they are starters. But at the same time, I think these are 2 guys that really don't have a lot of experience. Noteboom has a lot more experience than Allen. Allen's snaps last year were in the teens, Noteboom was over 60, I believe. So, I mean, Noteboom still has a long way to go as well as far as experience is concerned. But Allen, I mean, we're talking he had 10-something snaps that, he needed, in my opinion, I think he needed last night. They're valuable opportunities. And I think it would have helped the offensive line a lot more. Jeremiah Colon, I think, did struggle. Aaron Neary, I do think, struggled. I think really most of the offensive line struggled except for Chandler Brewer and, in my mind, Vitas Hrankowicz, who only played, I think, in just under 20 snaps. And he looked like the best center of the night. I want to see him get more of an opportunity, more of a run with the ones in preseason. I think, he had a nice play on that, on the Colburn run where, we talk about Colburn getting that first down. That doesn't happen if it's not for Hrankowicz, who basically, takes the guy and completely, pushes him out of the way, clearing this giant hole for Colburn, which, I'm not taking anything away from Colburn. He had to work for it because there were guys diving in his legs. But still, I mean, Hrankowicz looked really good at the end of the game. And that was one of the guys, to me, that definitely stood out and that deserves more playing time, as well as guys like Wolford and, Nasimba Webster.
And wasn't Vitas my pick for someone who was going to blow us away this preseason?
You did say that.
And I like Vitas a lot. And that's not just because we interviewed him. I just think he's a very underrated prospect. And I think, like you said, he played, pretty decent last night.
He played at Youngstown State, so I mean, that's probably why people don't want to do the work on him. But there's not a lot of film on him. You got to watch full Youngstown State games. There's not really cut-ups. But I definitely like the way he played, and as a whole, I think this offensive line is just going to keep getting better. Keep in mind, Cromer also really, just to put more pressure on his offensive linemen, to put them in more of stressful situations. He mixed it up. He was throwing Demby at left tackle at one point, and I'm like, what is going on? Demby was at left tackle, Edwards was at left guard. They had Evans at right guard. I mean, they were just kind of shuffling the whole thing.
They're trying to figure it out.
So, I think, that, and he's also trying to keep them on their toes, because it's kind of like, well, you never know, how a game's going to go. And so it's interesting. And, Cromer has his ways and they work. But again, it's definitely interesting. And, I think that's really all we can say about the offense. The defense, I think I was so impressed with Natrez Patrick, somebody that really isn't getting talked about the next day. Had an elite grade by Pro Football Focus, which is huge. I mean, he got an elite grade. Just a very sound tackler, was kind of all over the field making plays. Number 57, if you guys didn't, notice him. I'm a fan of his game, going back to Georgia. And I said it. I mean, I think this guy's going to end up making the Rams roster. I think he is definitely good enough. I think you're looking at Troy Reeder, who was actually the game leader in tackler. He was the game leading tackler. I believe he had 8 tackles. Troy Reeder looked good, but I think Natrez Patrick, his athleticism really stood out to me, and he's somebody that could definitely, have a role on this team. Josh Caraway, we talked about it on the pod. Caraway, he's got all the athleticism in the world, but he needs to, play with, aggressiveness and, be more violent. And I won't say he was more violent. I mean, he still blew right by the guy and used his athleticism to make the sack. I thought he had a good game as well. But, you're seeing something there. I think the Rams are going to really, monitor that. I think really with the defense, I think the biggest takeaway, because of how big his name is Obinna Okoronkwo is now in serious trouble in making this roster, because he literally has never played a down in a Rams helmet in any facet, whether it's preseason, regular season. I mean, he hasn't. And, this is somebody, I gave him a 2nd round grade. I loved his tape. loved his potential, but all of a sudden, a guy that looks like he's going to be a perfect fit for Wade's defense, I think he's helped out a little bit by the Justin Lawler injury, but with the way, somebody like Durham, played, Landis Durham, and the way somebody like Josh Caraway played, and then you already have, your big three now with Fowler and Matthews and Ibukam, and Trayvon Young played well as, on top of that. It's like there's really not much room, and the fact that Durham ended up starting, to me, looks like he's ahead of Caraway. Caraway's probably right below him, and Okoronkwo is in trouble. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? And do you think, would the Rams be able to stash him on the practice squad with that big name and able to not have him plucked?
I agree. I think that, Okoronkwo, or however you pronounce it, I always mess it up. But I think it's just kind of his time. I don't think that we've seen enough out of him. And I think maybe what he needs is a fresh start somewhere else. And I think Durham is a guy who we talk about a lot. He's very talented. I'm sure that the Rams know that. And a guy who I think could definitely play in his place. And a guy who, like you mentioned, started last night. But, and I've said this before, I felt bad because I really liked Okoronkwo for a long time, but I just kind of think we've seen what we're going to see from him. I mean, would you agree, or you just, am I?
I mean, we haven't seen anything
like I just, at this point, it's like, why he's taking up a roster spot.
Yeah, he's taking up a 90-man roster spot right now. I think when you have to narrow it down, like last year, keep in mind he got hurt, and then, he's on IR, so he's not really affecting the numbers, and then they're able to actually bring him back. They used their IR designation to bring back Okoronkwo, and people forgot about that. You only get one designation to return, and they used that on him, and he returned and did literally nothing. He didn't suit up. He was an inactive, scratch for the Rams. So, this is somebody, I think we deserve an explanation as to why he's not playing. I mean, unfortunately with preseason, they're not forced to give out any, injury reports until the season starts. And I think that's the bummer there, because they can kind of be as quiet as they want. But, there are a lot of Okoronkwo fans, in this fan base, and they wanted to see him. There are a lot of Oklahoma fans that wanted to see him. It's a bummer. It really is. I'm not going to say it's the end of his time with the Rams, because, there's still 3 preseason games to go. They might have a plan. Guys like Traven Howard, he started that game. He started next to, I believe it was Kaiser. And he's somebody that also, got hurt, stayed on the IR, and then came back the next year. So they've been doing that for a while. Thomas got hurt, Mike Thomas. That's why he's still here, But Okoronkwo was a 5th-round pick. He was a steal at the time. He's got a lot of ability. You just hope the foot injury doesn't continue to linger, and this is somebody that can finally get healthy and be able to play, because, preseason is perfect for a guy like that. Guy that can make those splash plays, really put on some good film, and gain some confidence. He's going to need that, because if he's not able to play at all in preseason, there's a really good chance the Rams cut him.
I agree.
Yeah, and really following up on that, as a whole, I really thought the back end of the roster looked good. Shout out to Keyshawn Nixon. I thought he played a great game. Friend of the podcast. The Raiders have a good one there. It was a first preseason game of the year type thing. The Rams are going to go to Hawaii to play the Cowboys this upcoming weekend. Alexis and I will kind of preview that and look at any of the Rams news throughout the week. And then we'll have our post game podcast. So, looking forward to that. Real quick before we sign off here, who are you most looking to, find their rhythm and maybe, break out next week against the Cowboys?
Alex Bachman is someone who I would really love to see have a breakout game. I'm just a fan of him. I'm a fan of his game. I think he's really talented, and he's a hard worker, and I think that he's someone who'd be really valuable to have on the 53-man roster. So I will be hoping that he breaks out. What about you?
Yeah, I'm going to go with John Wolford and Boogie Roberts on the other side of the ball. John Wolford, I just want him to get an opportunity to play the entire second half. It's probably not going to happen, but he should be number 3 on the depth chart. Like I said, I just don't, what is Allen bringing to the table at this point? What does Allen give you that Wolford can't? So I really am hoping Wolford gets the opportunity, because I think he's somebody that is just going to continue to impress as long as you give him the opportunity. Now, Boogie Roberts didn't get into the game, like I said, until the second half. I'd like that to change. I'd like them to, push Tanzel Smart to the second half. Maybe give Boogie Roberts some, first team snaps or whatever you want to call them in preseason. I don't think it's crazy because they did it with Landis Durham. So I would really be interested to see that. And I think Boogie Roberts is somebody, he's shown the ability to win as a nose tackle, as a defensive end in a 3-4. He's one of the best. He was one of the more efficient pass rushers in college last year. So I'd like to see him get a run and have an opportunity to, turn some heads.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
So I think that's going to do it for Jake Ellenbogen. She's Alexis Kraft. This has been the Downtown Rams podcast. We're signing off, but be sure, if you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. If you want some Downtown Rams merch, we have that all over our social media, and it's on our website. And if you want to subscribe, you want to get all the articles sent right to your email, be sure to subscribe to our article list. We have our mailing list, and it's right on the website. It's on the front page. Just put your email in there, and every article will be sent to your email. All right, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. Take care.
Hey guys, what's up? I'm here with Isaac Bruce.
Hey, Downtown Rams, what's going on? Hope everything's well. Tuning into every episode.